Her hands were trembling as the soldiers lifted her into the carriage. She was 16 years old. Court records remember her as Consort Han, one of the Korean tributes women sent into the Ming Palace, and she had just been handed over to the Emperor of China. This transition was not one of glory, but of a profound, soul-crushing displacement. Imagine a girl barely across the threshold of womanhood, being treated as a piece of diplomatic currency. The soldier's grip was firm, a reminder that her body was no longer her own. She was part of a larger mechanism of statecraft, a human tax paid in beauty and youth. Behind her, the familiar sounds of her village faded, replaced by the rhythmic clatter of hooves and the heavy silence of her fellow captives. The air inside the carriage was thick with the scent of fear and unwashed silk. Every jolt of the path felt like a final severance from her identity. This was the beginning of a long, cold journey into a world where her voice would never truly be heard again. Her mother wept as she signed the document. She couldn't write, so she used an ink mark. One less daughter to feed, one less mouth in times of famine. It was a choice between starvation and a gilded cage, though the family hardly had a choice at all. Han travelled for weeks in a sealed carriage alongside 15 other Korean maidens. They couldn't look outside. They couldn't speak to each other. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the thin slivers of light through the wood. One girl who tried to escape was brought back with her hand crushed. She died of infection days later. Her body was left at the side of the road, a discarded scrap of humanity. The others learned the lesson. Resistance was not an option. Each mile took them further from their mother's arms and closer to a destiny that felt more like a slow, ornamental execution. They sat in the stifling heat, mourning their own lives while they were still breathing, knowing that the world they once knew was vanishing forever behind the wheels. When the gates of the Forbidden City closed behind her, Han discovered that serving the Son of Heaven had nothing to do with honor. She would live 16 years inside those walls. She would watch an entire harem disappear in a single night. She would beg to see her mother one last time, and she would die in white silk. The architecture was designed to dwarf the human spirit, with towering red walls and golden roofs that seemed to mock the suffering beneath them. This was the center of the world, yet for Han, it was a tomb. Subscribe if you're new, and leave a like if you want script. Historians to keep unearthing these stories, because what comes next is worse. Han's story began the way tens of thousands of others did, with a system designed to harvest young women like crops. The opulence of the Ming court was built on the broken backs and stolen lives of girls like Han, who were expected to be grateful for their own imprisonment. Every step she took on the stones was a step further into a nightmare. When people think of Chinese imperial concubines, they imagine something elegant. Beautiful women in embroidered silks writing poetry. A life of luxury, serving the most powerful man in Asia. That image is propaganda, a thin layer of gold leaf over a rotting foundation. But the imperial concubine system existed for over 2,000 years. During that time, tens of thousands of women disappeared behind the red walls of the Forbidden City. And what most people don't understand is this. Concubines were not wives. They weren't considered human under imperial law. They were classified as precious objects, literally equated to porcelain vases in the palace ledgers. Their value was entirely aesthetic and functional. Stripped of agency or legal protection, they were assets to be moved, displayed, or discarded at the emperor's whim. Script historians aims to peel back this layer of romanticization to reveal the industrial scale of the dehumanization involved. To the state, Han was not a daughter, she was a tribute. Every 3 years, his imperial officials traveled through the provinces in what they called the Shunu selection. Sounds elegant, don't be fooled. It wasn't an audition, it was a forced harvest of the empire's youth. During the Ming dynasty, no family was exempt. All unmarried young women of eligible age had to be presented. Hiding a daughter was a crime, punishable by death for the entire family. Imagine the terror of a father trying to smudge the beauty of his child to save her, only to face the headsman's axe if he failed. Candidates were inspected by eunuchs and palace physicians. They checked every inch of their bodies for imperfections, birthmarks, or scars. Any defect disqualified them from the emperor's bed, but being perfect was its own curse. Those who passed were taken, ripped from their homes in the middle of their childhoods. Families received minimal compensation, but refusing the money meant admitting treason. The system didn't need to kidnap. Poverty and the law did the job. And what happened to the families left behind? Most never heard from their daughters again. Letters were forbidden. Visits were impossible. Occasionally, if a concubine rose to high rank, her family might receive a small stipend, a bitter price for a lost child. But for the vast majority, their daughters simply vanished into the red walls. Some families held funerals for daughters who were still alive because they understood the truth. The girl they raised was already gone. She had become a ghost in the Forbidden City, a name on a list of property. Han arrived in China as part of a different tribute. Korea sent women to the Ming Empire as part of diplomatic agreements. Between 1408 and 1435, more than 100 Korean women were sent to the Forbidden City, not as visitors, but as property. The day Han crossed the palace gates, she ceased to exist as a person. She became a number, a possession of the Son of Heaven. She was a diplomatic gift, no different from fine silk, expected to perform her role. But before she could serve, she had to be broken. The selected women didn't go directly to the harem. First, they went through what the eunuchs called refinement, a process that could last between 6 months and 2 years. The first phase was identity destruction. They cut their hair, a sign of dishonor in Chinese culture, severing their connection to their ancestors. Their names were replaced with numbers or generic titles. They were forbidden to speak of their families, and mentioning their mother resulted in physical punishment. Any personal possession from home was confiscated and burned. The women slept in barracks, 20 to a room. They were woken before dawn and went to sleep after midnight. For months they existed in a state of exhaustion so complete that resistance became physically impossible. This was psychological warfare, designed to strip away the self until only a hollow vessel remained. By the time they reached the inner chambers, they were no longer individuals with real pasts. The second phase was submission training. The women learned dozens of different ways to bow. They practiced 8 hours a day. If a bow was poorly executed, they were beaten with bamboo rods on their legs. Many carried those scars until death. They learned to walk without making noise, to keep their gaze lowered, to respond without being asked, to exist without taking up space, to smile when they wanted to scream. One training manual from the Qing dynasty lists 47 different rules for how to stand in the emperor's presence. 47 ways to exist in a single moment. Violation of any rule meant punishment. The third phase was preparation to serve the emperor. Historical documents describe a systematic process designed to eliminate any physical or psychological resistance. The women were examined monthly. Those considered inadequate were subjected to treatments that palace records describe with clinical coldness. This was not education, it was the domesticating of a human soul in silence. Palace medical records describe the process with chilling detachment. Notes from 1723 refer to candidates presenting resistance and preparation protocols that required multiple sessions. The clinical language barely disguises what was being done to these women behind palace walls. These were administrative records, official documents written as if they were talking about training horses or tempering steel. After months of this, the women who survived were considered ready to enter a world where their suffering had only just begun. After training, the girls entered the official system, and here began another form of hell. The hierarchy was brutal. At the top, the empress, the emperor's only official wife. Below her, the imperial consorts. Then high-ranking concubines divided into multiple levels. And at the bottom, common concubines, sometimes hundreds of them, and preparation women, girls whose fate had not yet been decided. Your rank determined everything. The amount of food you received. The Empress received more than 22 pounds of prime meat every day. A low-ranking concubine received barely 4 pounds, and often not even that, because provisions were stolen by corrupt eunuchs before reaching the kitchens. Many low-ranking concubines suffered from malnutrition. Their teeth fell out, their hair thinned, and they aged decades in years. The cruelest irony was that their declining appearance made them even less likely to be summoned. It was a downward spiral designed into the system. The emperor didn't visit his concubines, they were summoned. Every night a eunuch presented the emperor with wooden tablets bearing the names and portraits of available women. The emperor pointed to one, and then the ritual began. The chosen concubine was taken to the bathing palace. Female eunuchs bathed and prepared her, but they didn't dress her again. They wrapped her in a silk blanket like a package, only her face visible. Why? Because a clothed woman could hide a weapon. She was a package to open. 2 eunuchs carried her to the imperial chambers. They unrolled the blanket at the foot of the bed, and the concubine, without any clothing, had to crawl toward the emperor without raising her eyes. And here's what almost no one knows. A chief eunuch remained in the room throughout the entire encounter, behind a screen, but present. His job was to keep time. After exactly 30 minutes, he announced loudly, "Time to preserve the golden essence of the Son of Heaven." The emperor had to finish immediately. Yet if he didn't, the eunuch would enter and physically remove the concubine. After each encounter, the woman was examined by an imperial physician who recorded every detail. Why? Because if she became pregnant, there needed to be absolute proof that the child was the emperor's. But here's what made the system truly perverse. Most concubines were never summoned, not once, not ever. There were hundreds of women in the harem, sometimes over 1,000. The emperor might summon one per week, aging in silence, watching younger girls arrive, knowing that her only purpose, the only reason she was taken from her family, would never be fulfilled. And yet she couldn't leave, couldn't marry, couldn't have children with anyone else. She was property in permanent storage, with nothing to do but wait. The women turned on each other. The imperial harem wasn't just a prison, it was an arena. Hundreds of women, all competing for the attention of one man, all knowing that a single pregnancy could change everything or destroy everything. The result was a hidden war that lasted centuries. Concubines poisoned each other's food. They bribed eunuchs to remove rivals from the selection tablets. They spread rumors designed to make other women fall from favor. Historical records document cases of women slipping abortifacients into pregnant rivals' tea. If the baby died, so did the mother's chances. This was a world where friendship was a liability and trust was a death sentence for every woman. Centuries before the Qing, the same logic already ruled the palace. Empress Wu Zetian, one of the few women to ever rule China in her own name, he allegedly strangled her own newborn daughter and blamed a rival concubine. That concubine was executed. Wu rose to become empress. This is disputed by historians, but the fact that it was believable tells you everything about the harem's culture. The violence wasn't always physical, psychological warfare was constant. Senior concubines tormented juniors. Favorites were isolated and undermined. Alliances formed and shattered based on who the emperor looked at during dinner. One account from the Qing dynasty describes a concubine who spent 3 years pretending to be friends with a rival, only to testify against her when the empress launched an investigation into disloyalty. The rival was demoted to servant status and her children were taken away. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake, it was survival. It was the only strategy that worked in the dark. The tragedy is that the system turned victims into perpetrators. Women who had been kidnapped, trained and dehumanized learned to do the same to others because the alternative was being destroyed first. And if a concubine somehow survived the warfare and caught the emperor's attention, if she became pregnant, that's when the real nightmare began. Here's the truth no one expected. Getting pregnant was the worst thing that could happen to a low-ranking concubine. Common logic would say that a child of the emperor would elevate her status, but reality was crueler. A pregnant concubine was isolated in the most remote palaces of the Forbidden City. She spent 9 months under constant surveillance. She couldn't receive visitors, couldn't send letters, and couldn't walk through the gardens. And when the baby was born, it was immediately separated from its mother. If it was a boy, he was handed over to wet nurses and raised far from his biological mother. The distance was a tool of state control. If the child was a girl, many times she simply disappeared. Imperial records didn't bother to document the fate of low-ranking concubines' daughters. There are documents describing women so desperate to avoid this cycle that they secretly consumed abortive herbs. They preferred risking death rather than bringing a daughter into that system. And if a son died, the mother was often blamed, accused of negligence or even murder. Even when children died of common illnesses, the mother could be demoted or exiled. One concubine during the Qing dynasty lost 3 children to smallpox. She was accused of having poisoned karma and spent her remaining 40 years confined to a single room, forbidden from seeing any other member of the imperial family. Her crime was burying her children. Her punishment was dying alone. The palace walls did not just keep the women in, they kept the light out, ensuring that even the natural bond of a mother and child was twisted into a weapon of the state for imperial use. But as cruel as daily life in the harem was, nothing prepared the women for what happened in 1421. Emperor Yongle had just inaugurated the Forbidden City. It was the peak of his power. And then a rumor destroyed thousands of lives. One of the emperor's favorite concubines was found dead. Officially, she was declared poisoned. But rumors said something else, that she had taken her own life after an affair with a palace eunuch, and the reason was the emperor's impotence. Yongle went mad. Humiliated and paranoid, he ordered an investigation. But he wasn't seeking justice. He was seeking to silence everyone who might know the rumor. In a single night, 2,800 women of the harem were executed. Not just concubines, but servants, cooks, and laundresses. Any woman who might have heard something. The method was death by 1,000 cuts, a form of execution designed to prolong suffering. The executioners were told to make it last. Some victims took hours to die. The screams still haunt the stones. Girls as young as 12 were included in the massacre. Women who had served the palace for decades and pregnant concubines were not spared. By dawn, the courtyards had to be washed with buckets of water carried from the palace wells, the same wells where so many women would later choose to end their lives. There is no official record of this event in imperial documents. The Ming court erased it from history, but the testimony of Lady Kui survived. She was a concubine who was outside the palace that night, visiting a sick relative. She escaped the purge by accident. Years later, Lady Kui dictated her account to a Korean envoy. She described the scream that lasted until dawn, and the courtyard slick with blood. She named women she had known, friends who had shared her meals. Her testimony was preserved in Korean diplomatic archives, where Ming censors couldn't reach it. It remains one of the only first-hand accounts of what happened that night, a window into the absolute darkness of the Ming court. Lady Kui herself didn't escape for long. When Emperor Yongle died 3 years later, she was among the women selected for accompanying sacrifice. Her last recorded words were, "I survived the night of blood, only to die in silk." Han, the young Korean woman from our story, also survived the massacre, but her relief was short-lived. In 1424, when Emperor Yongle died, Han was included in the list of women selected for eternal honor. This was a practice called shunzang. When an emperor died, his favorite concubines were buried with him alive. The logic was simple and horrifying. The emperor would need company in the afterlife. The chosen ones received a last sumptuous meal with delicacies they had never tasted. Then two options: hang themselves voluntarily with white silk cords or be forced. In 1958, archaeologists found remains of 16 women inside the tomb of Emperor Jingtai. Analysis showed cervical trauma, but 3 skeletons showed signs of struggle. They were buried alive and tried to get out. Han wasn't that lucky. She died in 1424, 30 years before the abolition. When she begged to return to Korea to care for her mother, the new emperor rejected her. They hanged her with white silk and buried her alongside the man who destroyed her life. But for those who came after the abolition, freedom didn't follow. They were sent to the palace of perpetual solitude. The rules were simple: never leave, never marry, and pray for the dead emperor 3 times a day. Many went insane, others stopped eating. The most common method of escape was drowning in the garden wells. During the 18th century, an average of 12 bodies per year were found in those wells. Guards removed them at night without ceremony. The last imperial concubine,